Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unstoppable Product. This is the fourth chapter and the third chapter of the series, Low Risk Reinvention. Good morning, Warren. How are you?
Good, good. Oh, Jose, how are you? I'm feeling good today.
Fantastic. That's the kind of energy that we need here, and that's the
Yeah.
kind of energy that we want to translate or to share with all our audience. So today we're going to talk about reliability. Remember that in the last two chapters we were talking about the concept of low risk, which is based on our learnings and on our experience, we put together the framework that tells us and anticipates what customers want in order to reduce the risk perception of buying your product. And the less risky your product is, the more sales you will drive. Now, there are three different buckets within this framework. Customers want to see that your product has affinity with their workflow, with their value, with the value they're seeking for. It's a familiar and so on. That's affinity. Then we have the bucket of assurance.
All right.
And then today we're going to talk about the reliability bucket. What is, Warren,
Mm.
what is reliability? How would you describe what
Uh-huh.
reliability is?
Yep. I would describe it as different ways to prove that a company or a vendor is truly dedicated to a market. And this is a subject that I think comes up occasionally is right now, technology development, especially with AI, but also for software and SaaS, it's very easy to create new software. It's
Mhm.
very easy to create new
Yeah,
products. So
more with
with
no code.
yeah, exactly, no code. And all right, so if anybody can create a product, that means you can have completely unknown companies enter a market. But our reliability metrics really can help you decide, is this company dedicated to my space? And I think that's a big element of lowering the perception of risk.
Mhm,
And this is something that is really from the customer's point of view. It's very
mhm,
powerful.
mhm. I remember we discussed in the past also, and that's something that we also share with clients, right? Is a customer, or let's talk about the majority of the
Mm.
customers, right? Because the early adopters, they don't care that much about this
Yep.
and they
Right.
would risk. But the majority of the market, they don't want to risk to become technology orphans.
Huh? Yes. And there have been in various industries and segments people who are stuck with something that's old, it's not supported, the vendor is gone, and it's not a good feeling.
Mhm. So what we're saying here is that following these metrics of reliability that we're going to explain right away will help customers build a perception of low risk when buying from a vendor. So
Yeah, right.
it's something that will um, help them
Yes,
make a decision faster because it provides a kind of safety sense that you're going to stay around for a lot of time. You've been a lot of time around, or if you've not been, at least you are committed to be in this market for a lot of time and you're not going to let me alone and
right.
support it.
Precisely, and remember one of the key characteristics of the mainstream is they don't have self-confidence. They don't
Mhm,
feel that they can integrate, actually purchase and integrate a technology without help. Over in the early market, yeah, early adopters, sure, they can do anything on their own. They have lots and lots of confidence. The mainstream, and that's where all the big dollars are and all the big growth, those people, they want the ideal partner
mhm,
because they know they're going to have to rely on someone to get it done because they don't feel they can do it themselves.
mhm. Nice. Let's talk about the six elements of reliability that product builders and
Yep.
innovators should pay attention in order to sell more. And the first one is team, investors, and advisors. What can you
Yep.
tell us?
Sure. You can essentially look at whether or not a vendor or a company is dedicated to a space by simply looking at the background of the team Who are the leaders? Where do they come from?
Mhm,
Do they have experience in your industry? But the same thing can really be extended to investors and advisors. Does the company have the right advisors? Because you want those core capabilities because all the decisions you make are going to have a big impact.
mhm.
And it's just simply who is the team, what's their background, and investors tend to fall into that category many times also. The certain investors really know specific markets very well. So that's a key indicator of reliability. Who's your team? Who's your investors? And who are your advisors?
So when we think about communicating certain elements, when we're building our website, when we're sending messages through different channels or
Yep.
positioning messages, I've heard a lot to say, hey, customers don't care about, which by the way, we have it here. They don't care about your product roadmap or your product vision. They don't care about your team or investors and advisors. Actually, they care, right? What do we say to those experts saying that?
So in my mind, that the team and the investors and advisors, that's a form of credibility and proof. Because think about the opposite. If you have someone and maybe you're creating a product for manufacturing, if you have a company and no one anywhere has ever worked in manufacturing in your company, to me, that's a very serious deficiency. That's a big hole.
Mm,
Look at the other side. What if the team and the advisors all come from manufacturing, all from the right segment of manufacturing, and they have a history of working with that kind of customer in that industry? I believe that's more credible proof than saying we just know technology really well.
we're just getting started with this industry and this process and
It,
this.
the other part of this is word of mouth communication. There are people who,
That's element four, brand awareness. That
yeah,
comes
yeah,
hand to hand with brand awareness, which is another of the elements, right?
yes, yeah. If you have a leader or a set of leaders and they are connected in an industry, their word of mouth has been, and the communicating that they do with thought leaders, with all kinds of people in the infrastructure, right? And again, we're going back to talking about things like consultants and complementary suppliers and industry associations, especially as well
Mhm,
as the press and analysts. Well, you see, if they've got that word of mouth communication with those people and it's been going for a while, when it's time for them to start talking about their new product or what they offer, they've already got those channels of person to person communication
mhm,
established.
mhm.
And someone who's brand new from outside the industry, they don't have.
I was just reading an article, or I think it was for sure, a LinkedIn post by Winter, this market research tool for B2B SaaS, in which you can do surveys and research and so on. And they have created, or they have been researching how buyers in B2B software space, they make decisions for other vendors, how they hire or how they buy softwares, right? And one of the questions was about which channels do you consult and
Uh-huh.
trust
Yep.
before creating what they call the consideration set. So the consideration set is I have to consider a limited number of vendors to hire.
Mhm.
I don't consider 20 vendors.
Right.
I have three vendors to consider, and then it will be one winner out of those three vendors. Now, to build my short list, what channels and what types of let's say content do I read, do I trust? The number one channel was still word of mouth communication from peers.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Everyone is saying do SEO, do performance marketing, do advertising, do whatever, but that's going to do nothing for your positioning. For
Right.
uh, word of mouth still is the number one most trustable channel
Right.
to make those type of decisions.
And and you think about it, many of these decisions are fundamentally high risk. If you make a good decision, things go well. If you make a bad decision and the product fails or the supplier does not deliver in some area, the consequences are very bad.
Hmm.
In terms of lost time, lost money, it's not a
You can be fired.
trivial outcome.
Hmm. And I think that the second one was very tightly related, which was testimonials, reviews, case studies,
Yeah.
which in our
Same.
formula is assurance.
Yes. Another form of feeling a vendor is a good partner is if they, in the assurance area, provide those references, testimonials, let the prospective customer go and speak to existing
Mm.
customers directly without the vendor being present. That that kind of
Peer-to-peer
peer-to-peer.
communication.
Yeah, exactly. Very powerful.
But let's continue with reliability. So we've been talking about team investors and advisors, and then we
Yep.
jump into brand awareness, which is the second element. We have another element, which is IP and patents, right?
Yeah.
Patents.
And what a perfect way to show that you are truly dedicated to a market is if you take the time to go and get a patent or some kind of intellectual property. That means you're developing something new and it's not necessarily fast or cheap or easy, but that's a perfect indicator as to whether or not a company is really embracing the market that they serve. Is have they created something new and then decided to patent that new thing?
Mm,
And that's essentially for the benefit of the market.
mm. And I believe that also shows a way to say to the market, hey, I know about this. I know about this market. It's not only about the commitment, right? But in order to create an invention, I do need a lot of experience. So I'm saying you, hey, I do have this experience that requires to create this new invention
Yep.
for this market and to solve this problem.
Yes. So it's really a big indicator of this company is a the ideal partner as a supplier. They are going to partner with the customer to get
Mhm,
things done, and that takes time and commitment, and that's
mhm,
what IP does.
mhm. And the third element is well, product roadmap. In this case, the fourth, because we
Yeah, yeah, we
are in.
jumped. So, roadmap is very important, especially in industries where someone is taking your product and building something on top of it. So, in semiconductors would be an example, and people who build laptop computers or it could be mobile phones or desktop computers, and they're going to buy chips, integrated circuits, and things. If the vendor, sometimes it's Intel, other times it's other companies, but if they don't articulate, this is what we're going to do to evolve that chip set over the next few years, that means their customers can't really plan adequately
Mm,
because they don't know where that vendor is headed. And it's surprising how many companies want to know where you're going with your product. And this we saw this actually at Apple, where they had essentially software offerings for the Apple platform, and no one was essentially willing to guess that they would offer the same software for the Windows platform also. They did not have that on their roadmap. Okay. So There were all kinds of companies that thought that Apple might move to a new platform in the future. They did
Mm,
not articulate that. Potential customers held back. And if you can articulate that, yes, we are going to do that one, step two, step three over the next 5 years, that's a source of comfort. It's a source of reliability. It's a source of knowing where that vendor is headed, and you can plan accordingly. So
mhm,
it very powerful.
yeah. And even in software, I remember still this case in which we were going, or so this client had one software product deployed in their small systems, and the idea was to deploy it worldwide. But in order to deploy it worldwide, they were asking this old client in which I was working for the roadmap because they weren't feeling 100% safe without knowing what was going to come after in the next software versions because of there could be risks about dependencies and integration when you're going to deploy it worldwide with multiple systems, and most importantly,
Yeah,
you're going to touch with a lot of different end users. So if you screw up with end users that have very high, if you want, political power in the company, right? You don't want to mess it up. So in order to do this big deployment, high risk decision, they were asking for a long term product roadmap, and
yeah,
they will hold the decision until we wouldn't have the product roadmap. Yes, the product roadmap is going to reduce the risk perception because your customers have to make decisions
yeah,
based on that roadmap, and their
absolutely.
decisions, and they are at stake with your product. So think
Yeah,
about that.
and you can't keep it secret, right? No one
Yeah,
would be willing to commit to your solution because they have no idea what direction you're headed.
yeah, exactly. And then after this, we have market vision. What is the
Sure.
difference, Warren, between market vision and product roadmap?
All right. With market vision, and I know we use a lot of different examples, different industries to try to make this clear. If you essentially articulate that you think a certain segment or a certain market is moving in a direction and it's going to look different in the future, and the one that's changing a lot and has a lot of issues would be healthcare. So there's a lot of discussion
Mhm,
about how treatment of patients will be it'll be implemented less in a hospital or a clinic and
mhm,
more implemented at home. And in fact,
mhm,
there's a phrase called hospital at home.
mhm,
And if you say, all right, look, our vision is we feel that patients will be treated in their home more so than in a specific location.
mhm,
That means there are all kinds of things that will change as a result so that home treatment is possible and it's effective. And that vision of treating someone at home essentially then allows you to say, and where we are with our products, our solutions, our roadmap is we feel we will become more and more valuable with that future vision. And it is absolutely part of saying what your product is going to be, but it's where the market itself is headed because there are so many different elements in the so-called end user experience. And that's just one example of an industry that is in fact transitioning to something new, and a market vision is helpful to make the customer feel like this supplier sees things the way that we do.
And here maybe is where we can also talk about the example of this conversation that I had. Actually, I had this conversation. I got this feedback from two different people in just 1 week, and it was in the electric vehicle space. I wouldn't call it electric vehicle space. I would call it the transformation from vehicles or traditional engines into more environmental, let's say, care vehicles. And that could be in the form of hydrogen, or that could be in the
Yep.
form of electric vehicles.
Yep.
And then I would ask, these were two different people, they are not related with each other, and they were looking to buy a vehicle. And I would ask and they were willing to buy a gas vehicle. With all what's going on, you may think, hey, they're going to buy an electric vehicle. And they were no. One of them was saying, well, actually, both of them were saying the same. And both of them wanted a gas vehicle. Actually, one of them was my mom.
Yep.
Yeah. And another, a friend of the family of my wife. And then I would ask, why do you want a gas vehicle and not an electric vehicle with all the hype and the cool that they are and all of that? And they were both, the answer was the same. We don't know where the market is heading, which means we don't know if the electric vehicle is going to prevail
Yep.
or the hydrogen vehicle is going to win.
Yep.
So we'd rather buy gas, which is the safest choice,
Yep.
rather than put our money in something that is not going to be around for a while.
Yep. Yep.
And
What
that's related with market vision, Warren.
Yep. Absolutely, and it's a perfect timely example. I think it was within the last few days, maybe it was at the end of, last month. Apple announced they are not going to provide an electric car.
Oh
Apple
yeah.
had been working for at least 10 years on basically on an electric car, and they were gonna compete with Tesla, and they essentially scrapped that whole program after 10 years of development, and what does that say about a technology's vision of a certain market? Now, I know there are other considerations in terms of they've got competitive, pressure in other parts of their business, and maybe they've decided to focus. But it's very uncomfortable when customers see a company say, "Yes, we're in this. Oh, no, we're not in this. Oh, yes, we are in it. No, maybe not." Okay, so the whole transition from commitment to maybe it's, semi-committed or somewhat committed to not committed, all of these things create doubt, create uncertainty, lack of reliability. Yeah, it is an indicator, is how it is you articulate what the future will look like and how your solutions will fit in that future.
In the future.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then we have the last element, which is the partnership strategy. Why is
Yeah,
it important partnership strategy for the customers?
absolutely. That's absolutely part of the overall starting point, I'll call it, which is the customer does not have a lot of confidence. They don't have confidence in their ability to execute on certain things when it comes to technology. So they're looking for the perfect partner. And remember, solutions typically aren't from one company. They typically also involve partners and allies in the
Mm,
solution that is provided. So if you are going to rely on certain partners and allies for your solution, the way you go about selecting partners, who it is a viable partner, who's not, why it is they increase the value of your solution. It's how you go about selecting the different partners and allies
mm,
and what your strategy is for that, that sends a very strong signal to the customer that again, here we go. These people are dedicated to my space. They're dedicated to my problems. They understand what it is my life looks like. They know how to essentially make things happen in my market space.
mm,
And partners are going to be in there too. So, guess what? That has to be articulated, and the selection of those partners has got to be an ideal fit. And that's part of becoming the ideal partner yourself with the customer. That's a big sign of reliability.
Because you're surrounded with the right partners that are going to help you
A-
deploy, support, help the client get the most
Yep.
of your product.
Now, a very uncomfortable example is here locally with Boeing. People are trying to understand, why is it that there are so many problems with airplanes in
Mm.
flight, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm not flying anymore after
it,
that.
there are parts, there are doors that fall off, right?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, that there's something wrong with Boeing jets now. And there are people doing an analysis. Why are Boeing jets falling apart in flight? You talk about high risk. Okay. And it comes back to some of who their partnership strategies to them. They partnered, and in fact, they merged with a partner that was more focused on cost reduction than on flight safety. Sometimes you don't see it until it's late, but what a mistake. And of course, the CEO of Boeing had to resign.
So this partner was manufacturing some of the parts that Boeing was using.
Yep, yep. And they were emphasizing low cost over
Mm.
everything.
I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah.
I would say unfortunate news. Because it should
Yeah.
be safety first
It,
for
it,
everything that is such a high risk.
exactly.
Lives
Aviation.
are at stake. Yeah,
Yeah.
aviation.
Yeah. You can't cut corners in aviation. That's one of the highest risk industries,
Mm.
and the partners you use and engage with have got to be first class.
Yeah. And that has consequences, right? Because so let's say that Boeing stopped to be that brand that it used to be, reliable brand
Yep.
for
And
aircraft manufacturing. It stopped. And now you can see a lot of clients canceling their orders.
yeah, how about that? And it turns out that if for those people who the industry analysts who were starting to look very closely at what happened, it was a partnership problem.
This is I would say, an extreme example, but this also happened in softwares, and this also happened
Yeah.
in less risky technologies, but still technologies that they come with or they put at risk at some point. Let's say the position of your customers, in which they have to learn, in which their jobs are at stake. That can be painful to navigate, things like that.
Yeah.
So remember that the risk perceived is it depends. It's how to say it, it's variable, right? For us, we're comparing missing lives with something that is losing a job. But the worst that can happen for someone that is hiring a software is missing the job.
Yeah.
So that's the highest risk for them. So it's all about empathy. It's about thinking, what is the highest risk
Yeah.
for my customer if my product fails?
Yep.
For aviation is missing lives. For a software, it probably is losing a job, but it's the highest risk.
Yeah. And that's the old saying that I think we repeat it occasionally is there used to be a phrase very common in IT, which was no one ever got fired for buying from IBM. And
That's the perfect closing for today, Warren.
why is that? It's because they had nailed that reliability bucket. They were perfect. They were the perfect partner for their customers.
And you can see in consulting, for example, a lot of the decisions, I've been in these kind of fights, right? Fighting with, let's say, a smaller but reliable brand, but not as much reliable as EY or
Um,
PwC. And you will always, if not almost always, lose the deal versus
yeah,
these big guys because they are more reliable in that sense.
yeah, yeah.
But they're not better specifically for the problem that these examples we were trying to solve, but they were the big brands. They're more
How
reliable.
about that? That means that the feeling of safety wins out over the actual solution, right? You can have a better answer, you can have a better offering, but it's not as low risk. How
Yeah,
about that?
exactly. I just related this with another example, which is not technology example, right? But I think you're not a big fan of Formula One, right, Warren? You're not,
Not yeah, okay. Not
but
so
that's
much,
okay.
but it's okay.
I am. Well, here's the example. So this year it was a big news that at the beginning of the year, Ferrari they hired Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is in Mercedes, and then they fired Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz is looking for, he says, for a job for next year, but he won't have any problem because he's really good. Now, the thing that you would read and you would think is that, okay, now Carlos Sainz is performing. And then the boss who made that decision at Ferrari, you can think, okay, maybe he got fired, but I bet that this boss, who is Fred Vasseur, he was thinking, okay, if I am changing this guy who is Carlos Sainz, who is good guy, but he's won three GPs but no championships, I'm
Mhm.
changing him for Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton has seven championships,
Right.
Formula One. So his decision was clear. I hired the best
Yep.
driver available, not available, but in the history of the Formula One, right? So he's a reliable guy. So
Absolutely.
I won't get fired because of hiring this guy, even though the other guy looks like it's better.
Yeah, yeah, and it increases their team expertise in some dimension. That that's a higher
Good point.
performing person.
Good point. Let's see. Carlos Sainz is real good, really good.
Yeah.
All right. And with this, we're going to leave it here.
Okay.
Remember, so well, let's summarize a little bit the last three chapters, because with this chapter, we close the series talking about the low risk reinvention. So
Yes.
we call it the low risk reinvention because as products go within the maturity of the markets and markets evolve and you enter into mainstream, customers become more risk averse
Right.
to buy technology.
Yep.
So we need to reinvent our products and value propositions and key positioning messages to show that we are a low risk value proposition. We have a low risk offering, right,
It
Warren?
absolutely. And it is. It's a you are continuously adding what we call intangible attributes. They're designed to lower the perception of risk. It's extremely powerful because you're actually refining your product using the perspective of the customer rather than the internal perspective.
Mm.
Uh, and it's always making additions, the right kinds of added attributes in either affinity or reliability or assurance so that the perception of the risk goes lower and lower, and the more you lower the perception of risk, the more people are willing to buy, and that's a big deal.
That's the low risk reinvention. And I like to summarize all this with this phrase, which is build for the lazy and users,
Yeah.
market for the fearsome
Yeah.
buyers, right?
Okay.
So that's the low risk reinvention. And just as a friendly reminder, in the last three chapters, we went through the 18 elements, and this is a guide for you to get more customers by assembling these 18 elements and by
Yep.
communicating this that you have these 18 elements to the market.
Yep.
And they are basically in three buckets. One is affinity, which means affinity to the buyer and to the end user. Second element is assurance. And the third element is reliability. Today, in the Unstoppable product, we've been talking about reliability. If you didn't go through the last two chapters, I encourage you to go through the last two chapters to learn more about the elements of affinity, the elements that you have to build to make your client feel assured with your product. And we'll be here in 2 more weeks in the Unstoppable Product Show. Warren, thank you so much for your time.
Yep. You
Been
bet.
fun again. I hope that our audience has learned a lot. And remember also, you can see all the links to the podcast in predictableinnovation.com/podcast. podcast. We have the podcast in YouTube, this video, of course, in Spotify. You can listen it in Apple iTunes and also in Amazon Music. We'll be here
Uh,
in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you, Warren.
You bet.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
And you too, Jose. See you.
See you.